What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Tribe of Runners podcast. I'm your host, Liz Myers, and today I have a guest who I'm very excited to talk about because as ultra runners, we're always talking about, oh, we need to be super fit, super strong, all the things physically, but we don't always get into the topic of mentally, mindset, or anything of that. And if we do, we just brush it off and, oh, we need to be mentally strong. And so today I have an amazing guest. I have Dr. Haley Perlus on the podcast who's going to talk so much about mindset and being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and just so much that we're going to dive into. So thank you so much, Haley, for being on the podcast.
Liz, super happy to be here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I told you before this, I have so many questions and just so much to go in depth on like what you do and all of the work that you do. And I genuinely have so many questions. But before we get into that, tell us like about you, how you got into the work that you're doing, the work that you do. Give us all the details.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate with how I fell into sports psychology at 12 years old, and really never strayed. Although you don't know what you don't know, so things came to me as I was growing. But I grew up in Canada, and I was an alpine ski racer. And long story short, I had a coach bet on me to win a juvenile world championships. And when I say bet on me to win, 40 seconds before I was about to compete, he pulled out $100 bill, put it in front of my face, and told me that he bet on me to win. To all you coaches out there, it's not something, obviously, Liz, you're a coach too. It's not something we recommend coaches do, but it worked because he had trained me to endure pressure. The training and the processing and the build up. And he and I had a relationship that he knew that if he said that to me, most likely I would be, wow, that's cool. If you believe in me so much, why shouldn't I believe in myself? So his belief in me did transfer to me believing in myself. And I did go down and I did win that race, which was great. Awesome. But the cooler thing even is I knew something had gone on in that moment, but I didn't really know what. 2 weeks later, that coach brought a sports psychologist to come and speak to my team, which was really rare back then. Sports psychology was not something that you actually formally do. And to that extent with youngsters, I just thought she was so cool. And so I went home at 12 and I told my parents that I wanted to be a sports psych gal when I grew up.
That is so crazy.
It was super fun. And then fast forward to that, I really did think I was only going to be involved in sports, work with professional athletes, be a sport expert, marry a quarterback. I don't know, all those things. But then I came across another sports psychologist by the name of Dr. Jim Lair, and he was applying sports to all aspects of life. Mm-hmm. And so again, another leader had impact on me. And so I was like, ooh, I could do this in sport and business and in health and fitness. And so now it's really just the core principles and bringing it to all aspects of life. And obviously we're talking about ultra running, but you and everyone who's watching and listening, we all have other aspects of our lives. Mm-hmm. And we all know that what you do in running, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually also transfers, probably physically too, but just for sure it transfers to the other aspects. I just love this field so much.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And you have, you mentioned being in sports first, finding the love and passion, and then taking it even a step further and now doing it outside of quote unquote fitness, which I think is so true because us as humans, like, yes, we are obsessive. Usually we get into sports and it's all in and we're doing all the things, but it does go so far into our personal lives as well. Like I've chatted with so many people and everyone's like, this sport has changed me, whether it be running or, cycling, swimming, anything of that nature. Even like as a child too, people doing sports or playing sports, you grow so much as a human throughout. So I think, the correlation between the two, it's phenomenal. And the fact that you have the ability to talk to leaders, sports, athletes, coaches, all of that, I think it's so important and you're doing amazing things. So I think what you're doing is awesome. And it's funny, I, obviously did a little creeping on you and I saw your story about like at 12 years old, and I was like, oh my gosh, I encountered something very similar when I was younger. He didn't bet money on me, but I had a very like or very in like I'll never forget this moment, I guess is a good way I should say it. And I was playing basketball. I was maybe in 8th grade, so like 14, 15, I don't know. And we were tied game. I got fouled. I had the last chance to make a basket at the end of the day. I was doing the foul shots, and my coach like pulled me aside. And he's like, "I know you'll do this." Like all the pressure in the world was on me in that moment. And back then, like thinking about, it, I was like, I had no doubt in my mind that I was going to make that shot because he had so much confidence in me. And then, I obviously didn't go the way you went, but I've always had sports in my life, and I've always played sports, and I love that confidence that's built. And I know confidence is a huge thing, and we'll kind of get into that. But like, what do you think as someone that is in this, how do some people thrive on similar situations where like that confident is, we hear it from someone and we believe them, we trust them, in comparison to someone and that would, in a different sense, that would hear that and that would crumble them because of the pressure?
For sure. Yeah. And it's the stories in which we tell ourselves, and it's the training. So I'm going to bring up the word training a lot because the people, I mean, look at your sport. There is so much training in order to develop the endurance, in order to develop the discipline, the strength, the power, the steadiness, the navigation. And we just don't do enough training to our mindset. And it is training. And we have to train the stories that we tell ourselves. So in this particular situation, we feel pressure.
Mm.
However way we feel it, whether our coach puts pressure on us saying you gotta get this ball in the basket, or me, you gotta win this championship, or just even a simple coach saying I believe in you. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
sometimes athletes actually take that as negative. Well, now he believes in me, so I don't want to let them down, right? So it's the story. But anytime you have pressure, we are all in an emotional and a mental fork in the road with that particular pressure. On one hand, we're going to feel anger, frustration, worry, fear, anxiety. And why is it that we feel that? Is because we have a story that we've told ourselves that creates that. So if I go to my situation when my coach bet on me, I could have thought, how could he bet on a 12-year-old and be angry at him for telling me right before I was about to compete? I could also be afraid. What if I let him down? I could also be worried. What if I make a mistake? Right? So that's how that pressure then spirals out of control. And then our body, we call it bracing, but all our muscles start contracting.
Mm-hmm.
Our mind either gets so narrow that we can't think about anything, or so broad that we can't target on anything. And then from there, performance isn't optimal. On the flip side, we could feel excitement, passion, hopeful, alignment, confident. And it's all, again, because of the pressure, the story we tell ourselves about the pressure. If my coach believes in me, why shouldn't I believe in myself? If my pressure, if I'm feeling that pressure, what's that inviting? I believe pressure is an invitation, not an enemy. So pressure is an invitation. What is it inviting me to do right now? How cool is this experience? What am I going to learn about myself? So it's all about the story. And then from there, our emotions listen to those stories, and then our bodies listen to our emotions. And there you go.
Yeah, that's so crazy. And it genuinely all makes sense. And I think the hardest part for a lot of us is it's very dependent on what you're doing, who's around, who's involved. And also, you kind of mentioned this, but like sometimes it could be someone saying something to you or internally, like us. I know for ultra running, like it's a very solo sport, is what is said. But at the end of the day, like we have our crew out there, we have people that we've told I'm going to do this, and in the back of our mind like they're watching us even though they maybe aren't watching us like we think they are, and so we put that pressure and just always trying to do better in some aspect. I feel like a lot of people in the sport, I'm sure in the world, but we put that pressure on ourselves to do things and do the crazy things like run 100 miles. Within that, like how do you manage, or I guess train yourself to maybe get that pressure not to be the enemy, And to, like, is there a trick? Is there something to do? I'm sure you have all the answers or good answers in that aspect.
I certainly don't know if I have all the answers, but I do believe it's taking a moment for some real self-reflection and looking at the pressures that you are experiencing, whether you're right, whether they're external or whether they're self-imposed. And the first things first is being real honest with yourself and asking if that pressure is necessary.
Mm, mhm,
So maybe this is your first attempt at this trail, or your first attempt at this distance, or the first time you've ever done anything like this. So you may have put pressure on yourself in a different format, but now this is a new format. So the pressure that you used to put yourself in an older format because you know what you could do, you know what you were capable of, you were more comfortable, not completely ever, are you, I think 100% comfortable, but you were more familiar, perhaps is the better word. So therefore, certain pressures, certain goals that you set for yourself are justified.
mhm,
But then in today's race, in today's event, I'm just asking if the pressure is justified. And I want you to really take a moment and either own it or dismiss it. Because sometimes we put unnecessary negative pressure on ourselves. So just really look at the pressure you're feeling, look at the pressure you're experiencing, and ask yourself, is it necessary? And I know that sometimes other people put that on you, but you're either going to internalize it or not. You're going to let it penetrate or you're not. So that's the first question. And then if you are owning that pressure, yes, I have these expectations. Yes, I feel this pressure. Yes, I want that goal. Well, now it's just, well, now you want to do almost like what I did with my coach. I don't remember the specifics, but I do remember thinking, if my coach believes in me, why shouldn't I believe in myself? And where's the evidence that I can believe in myself? And so for me, I remember literally thinking, I've won every slalom race so far this year. This is a technical course. I'm a technical skier. I literally started creating a list of all the reasons why I can believe in myself. Because you can't just look in the mirror and say, I think I can, I think I can, and
mhm,
suddenly that confidence is going to be real.
mhm,
So once you've owned the pressure, once you are accepting the expectation, committing to the goal, I want you to really now provide evidence on how you know how you can problem solve when you're on the trails, on how you know that you can monitor your cadence, your heart rate, I know sometimes you have a crew, but sometimes you don't, right? So,
mhm,
where's the evidence that you know how to monitor yourself? Where is the evidence that if you feel pain, you know how to distinguish between functional and non-functional pain?
mhm, mhm,
I've heard you talk about this with your ankle,
mhm,
assessing. So we all have capabilities. We just need to bring those capabilities to the center of the conversation to back up why that pressure can be excitement, challenge, confidence, passion, alignment, and not anxiety, fear, worry, frustration.
yeah, I love that. And as a coach, that's like one of the biggest things I'm always saying is like, look at all of this evidence of your training. You've done this, we've done this, if we've done this, all of this you need to remember because when it gets nasty out there in the middle of a race, the worst thoughts always come to mind. It's very normal for us. We spiral, things aren't going to plan, but if you can remember the good and the evidence that you've built up through training, it makes such a difference. But it's not always the easiest. So like I completely understand this, and I think also environment too, like who you're around and how you grew up can really help determine that direction of like how you handle the pressure in life. In not in a bad way or a negative way, it's just how the world works. Like we're all a little different in some aspects. We all handle pressure and life differently. But have you ever noticed anything that stands out within athletes specifically because we're runners, that have helped people overcome this? Like obviously the evidence, but is there any like one distinguishing thing that you've ever happened to notice that people seem to overcome that pressure a little bit better?
I actually don't think I think it will help with the pressure, but it really has nothing to do with pressure. Just yesterday, I was working with a triathlete and it's actually come up quite a few times this week. The fact that confidence and doubt can coexist.
Mm,
And
okay.
that if you have some doubt, it doesn't mean that you suddenly lost all your confidence.
Hmm.
And that's really important. especially in a sport like ultra running or endurance sports in general. There's just too many variables. So, how can we really expect ourselves to go in there with 100% confidence, no doubt at all? It's okay to say, I'm prepared and I still don't know if I can finish today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I think from a mental toughness perspective, and I don't even really like the term, but I use it because I think that's we just know the term mental toughness. But it doesn't mean always being 100% confident and positive self-talk. It doesn't mean being fearless. It doesn't mean having zero uncertainty. I mean, uncertainty is here to stay.
Mhm.
And anxiety is the emotion of uncertainty. So, so we have to give ourselves a little bit of a break. And I think the biggest problem is that we want what we cannot have when it comes to the mindset. And we're all talking about being fearless and positive all the time and confident and it's just not a reality. So I think the more we get comfortable with having, okay, so I had a doubt
Mhm. Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm suddenly not confident.
Yeah.
And just being able, I use the word tolerate. We got to tolerate our fears. We have to tolerate our doubts. We have to have doubt tolerance, have fear tolerance, so that we're not trying to spend so much time pushing them away. But it's almost just like an inner brat that exists. I read that. There was a title of a book and I just loved it called Your Inner Brat. It's just like that brat and it's not going anywhere. So we just have to not pay it much attention and then focus on what does this moment need from me right now? Does it need breath? Does it need cadence? Does it need nutrition? Does it need stride? Does it need technique? Does it need tactics? Does it need equipment change? What does this moment need from me right now? And then as you focus on that, guess what? You're moving with the pressure.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that because it just there's so many times that I've heard, especially as a coach, is like, well, like I'm confident, but yeah, I feel really good about this race, but and it's like all of us think that. Like no matter what, we all have that little bit of doubt within the mind. And it's knowing that even though we have that doubt, we should continue to do things or do the thing, and I think it's Brene Brown that has said this, like, and it's always stuck with me, is like have a strong back but a soft front. So like always, and I get that from my mom too, like someone who's been super confident all my life, and I've looked at like that's probably where I get my confidence. But that doesn't mean I don't in the back of my mind think, can I really do this though? Like, can I do that? Like that's super normal, but the distinguish between the two is actually like you said, tolerating it. I love that. I never really thought about that. And if you can tolerate that little brat in your head, you will definitely overcome the crazy hard things that we continue to try to do in any sport and in any life.
Yeah, I did. I did come up with I actually did a check. Did I come up with this concept? And so far I haven't found anyone else that's done it. So doubt tolerance is a term that I'm really working with right now. And I just think it's like, whew, like a load off. I'm human and
Yes.
we all experience these fears, doubts, like, whew. So then it doesn't have to be such a big deal. And, and as you said, you said the magic word, but
Yeah.
we all, I often say we all have big butts and we cannot lie. Although I am talking to a group of runners and endurance athletes, so I don't know how big the butts are in this group, but
No, it's so true. And it is so funny too to think, we all like I have heard this from so many people. I've said it myself so many times. But do you, as someone that's in this industry and, have probably talked to way more people than I have even imagined, but do you encounter people having that maybe vulnerability to be able to talk to you about it or talk about it more in general? Do you think a lot of people hide this and like hide that like big butt that they're carrying around?
well, I mean, being in the profession that I'm in, I think I am the person that people, if they're going to talk to anybody about it, it's probably me. However, I think more and more people, well, it's becoming more receptive.
Mhm.
It's becoming more accepted is probably the better word. And what I think is the important thing is to be able to see others be vulnerable and say that they have these fears and say that they have these doubts. For example, if we're talking about this, say that they feel these pressures and be open about it. And this is what I'm doing to combat it. This is what I'm doing to tolerate. This is what I'm doing to work with it. So I don't think it's just, hey, I have all these fears, period. It's I have all these fears and this is, and then the next step is the resilience piece is how do you get back up with intention? And the more and more we watch people like you, the more and more we look at coaches and people like me and models and people who are walking the walk and talking the talk and see them fall down and then get back up. See them say, I mean, one of the greatest athletes of all time, not in endurance running, but in tennis, Novak Djokovic. I love his interviews because he is so human, and he says, "What is this thing called positive self-talk all the time?" Someone asked him if his mind wanders. He's like, "Of course, my mind wanders."
Mm-hmm.
So I think us learning from people like that gives us permission to also be vulnerable. But it's not just these are my fears, period. It's these are my fears, and then the resilience piece comes.
Mm-hmm.
How do we work with these fears? So it's a two-step process. And because that's the work I do, I hear it all the time. But my work is growing, so it tells me more and more people are willing to go there.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And like you mentioned, we're seeing it from people that we look up to, which gives us that, oh, it's okay to talk about this, or oh, it's okay to have this feeling or experience, and to know that it's normal and there's nothing to be ashamed of or feel any less of because of it. And I love to hear that that is growing so much. I know I see it quite a bit in the sport, and I feel like the more we hear it's just kind of talking running wise, when we hear elites or anything of that nature talking about it, I have athletes come to me like, "Hey, I saw so and so talk about this. Like, I've experienced that too." And it's like they open the gates because they've heard someone that they look up to talk about it. So I think that's phenomenal that it's happening, and we can actually, have that ability to be able to talk freely about it and not so much, feel ashamed or anything of that nature.
And just the casualness. I mean, I did watch, if I can share, I did watch Chris, was it Christy? Who are you running the no
Yeah, Christy,
business?
Christy Brinker.
Christy.
Yep.
Yes. The two of you were just talking about the pain you're experienced. If one person's gonna feel good at one point and the next person's gonna feel like crap the next point, it was just so like you just normalized. I'm
Mm-hmm.
listening to two coaches, two high level athletes, and I'm listening to you normalize the mental and emotional experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that made my heart sing.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because we got off that podcast and we were both like, we hope people like realize like we're just normal people. Like we have fears, we, like second guess our training, like we're normal, we go through it, we experience the same thing other people do. And it is funny because like as a coach, I get people that would be like, well, one day when I'm something like you, and I'm like, honey, you are like me. We're all the same. You know what I mean? So it's very nice to hear that coming from you, to be 100% honest.
And it's the same for me. I'm not a endurance to the lengths of you, but I'm a big cyclist and get on my trails and I often, and it's usually more on my road bike than on when I'm running, but on my road bike I'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I just overcame that mental toughness moment." So I'll throw on my camera for like, a 2-minute social media post or something, and this is the tool that I just used
Hmm.
because I too am not perfect because
Yeah.
I too am a human being. And so, these are the things that we're experiencing. And I do think the more we can do that, the more people will give themselves permission to feel those things too. And then they will mentor somebody else. They will lead someone else. They will advise a friend. They will advise a child. So let's just continue to pass it on.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. And it's so true. And at the end of the day, we're always trying to be better people. I feel like anyone that's in fitness or leadership, we are always just striving to be better. And it could look different for everyone. We're all at different aspects of life. But I think sharing it is a huge part of that within the industry, no matter what you're doing. Because, like you mentioned, my story can resonate with one person, which makes them have a epiphany moment, which then resonates with another person. And it's just like a domino effect. And that is, at the end of the day, I think what all of us truly want.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Amen.
cool. It is so cool. And I love the work that you're doing. So, we talked a lot about pressure. And in the sense, like, not having the pressure be the enemy. And I feel like we hear it and we're like, oh, yeah, that makes so much sense. That sounds so easy. But it's not always that easy for all of us. And we struggle to truly do what we can in a situation. And I'm sure within ultras, it's different because, you know, like you mentioned with the coach giving someone pressure on without even knowing it, but I feel like a lot of us internalize our own solo pressure of like me as a human. So I'm, getting ready to run a race, but I want to PR it and it doesn't maybe go as planned, or maybe we get injured. A prime example, I went out, ran my one race last year, and 3.5 miles in, I got injured. And that injury spiral was insane. I couldn't run. I wanted to run so bad. The pressure was on me as a coach to get back into running as soon as possible. Like there's so many things in that aspect. Like, what do you think, or do you experience where athletes can't run, can't do their sport, and then come back into things like with that pressure, not so much from the side of like other people on them, but all internal? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. So it goes back to, like I said, pressure isn't the enemy, it's an invitation. So and you might need others because sometimes we are our great ally, but sometimes we're our worst enemy.
Mhm.
And especially with injury, sometimes we may say, hey, we're ready to get back on the trail, and we are not,
Mhm.
but it's that pressure that we feel that compels us to do something that wasn't in our best interest. So even though it is self-imposed, I really don't recommend people do this all on their own because we don't actually know when we're lying to ourselves. And sometimes we are lying to ourselves.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, sometimes we're letting ourselves off the hook
Mm.
when we could be, we are ready to get back on, but we're so scared that we're now going to use, I just need more preparation, I just need more time, when we're just disguising that with the anxiety that we feel for getting back out and confronting that pressure again. So I do not like to do this work in a bubble,
Yeah.
like with yourself.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I'll go back to the you mentioned about when injury, if we're going back into something, we kind of keep ourselves back in the sense like we technically are ready, but maybe we're scared. Like, I'll give a great example. When I first got back from my ankle, I was not scared to go on the trail, but I'm like, do I really want to risk rolling my ankle again? Like, is it strong enough? No, I need to give it more time. And it's that like consistent battle of back and forth of like if you're really ready or not. And for me, luckily, I just kind of told myself to suck it up and go get a trail. But I'm sure it's not as easy for everyone. And I knew I had enough people around me that were telling me I had a big, I wasn't just in my bubble. I had other people saying like, listen, you're good. You did the PT, you did all the work, you can get back on the trail, you're fine. But what do you feel like is someone, or like the best sense of, is it having other people help them through injury or whatever they're going through in that aspect?
It's a combination of being, in quotations, monitored, guided, instructed, educated. Then you need to be listening to your own body too. So it really is the combination and the compromise, the negotiation. But for me, because I'm not an exercise physiologist, I too have sprained my ankle. It took mine a whole, I don't think it took me a full year that, to really get back. And biking, I could road ride, but mountain biking hurt too. Like, those are bad injuries. But I didn't really know the step by step process of getting back. So for me, it'd probably just get on the trail and go run. Well, maybe there's some education, maybe there's some technique, maybe there's some intervals, maybe there's some pacing, maybe there's some just just check in, like check, I didn't feel any pain here, check. So I feel like we just need to have some level of trust in a return to sport program.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if we have some trust in an actual program with a professional, and then we bring our own feeling and our own thinking to it, the combination will work. But then there's also, what did the injury teach us? Like, now we have pressure to return. Well, I also have pressure to return and not re-injure.
Yeah.
So what do I need to learn about? I don't know. Maybe I've never gone to anybody who does body alignment work. And maybe, I mean, I have an athlete right now, not a runner, but I have an athlete, runs for the sport. But unfortunately, in a year, you've broken 2 feet, strained 2 hamstrings, like just a lot of injuries. And I'm not saying this is a body alignment problem, but I'm questioning maybe it is.
Mm-hmm.
So now so what is this pressure, this pressure to return, this pressure to participate in my sport? Maybe I have to actually sit down and really take in, maybe I'm not recovering. I got to look at my recovery. I got to look at my body alignment. I got to look at the strength. You just have to, uh, the pressure that I'm feeling is also, I'm also being questioned. And those questions matter. And I don't want to dismiss it, because if I dismiss it, I'm going to miss something possibly. So I look at pressure as also information and not just this expectation.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel pressure, I'm a public speaker. And next month I am filling some big shoes. And that sports psychologist that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Jim Lair, he recently passed. He was a mentor of mine. And he really, before he died, he kind of opened the floor for me and said, Haley, if there's someone to kind of, pick up, just follow the message and continue the mission, it's you. And so now I'm delivering this keynote as one of his students. I mean, that's one of the selling points of me being this. And that's a whole lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got expectations, external and inside. And what I'm doing, I find myself is saying, I'm asking, okay, what is it about my public speaking that I can improve upon? What is it what's the messaging that this particular audience has already learned and that I can contribute? It's just asking me to get more involved in the training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the more I get involved in what is the pressure inviting me to do, to, I don't know, maybe slow down, to have a pause in between my stories, all these things that I'm improving upon. It's an interesting thing. It's pressure, but now I'm getting into the work.
Mm-hmm.
Then the outcome is still there. I still want a good outcome, but I'm more focused on the work. And then I know that the work, the outcome I give myself the best shot at having the outcome I want. So I don't just focus on the outcome, the expectations. I really say, like, what is this inviting me to do? How is it inviting me to grow?
Yeah. And, it, as a runner that has all the expectations to do all the amazing things, I feel that so much in my bones, where a lot of us, and I see this in athletes that I've coached and friends that are runners, where we will do one of two things. Like, the pressure gets the best of us and then we're second guessing everything, we're flailing, or we take that and we continue to say, well, I could improve here, I need to focus a little more here in my training. Some things we just cannot help that happen out there on races, but we can mentally prepare ourselves, I feel like, for almost every outcome that we could possibly imagine, with always the expectation of like random things popping up and you never imagined it would happen. But we prep and prepare as much as we possibly can. But I feel like it's, now you're saying that, it is really the pressure that is putting through, however it is, on external or internal, that make us dive into like what we want to do to be better and do better. And then we have the other opposite end of the stress, the side where it doesn't always work for the best, and the pressure gets the best of them. But the mental side of things, like, this is something we're consistently working on, and I know you talk a lot about this in all the things that you do. But do you feel like there's a point where there's a starting point, I should say, when someone is struggling, with a sense of pressure being on them? Like, what is the best approach to have someone who doesn't handle the pressure very well try to reassess that pressure and handle it better mentally?
First thing is, well, it is a pretty loaded question. But if I'm, in a moment, I find myself feeling this huge weight of this pressure and expectation, and I find my stomach's getting in knots. I find everything contracting, can't think, can't breathe, like almost like a panic attack, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're thinking about the physical symptoms of that. Again, if you could have this question, what does this moment need from me right now? if you could really start to train, what does this moment need from me right now? What does this moment need from me right now? Immediately and I like questions. I don't personally love statements because I can
Mm.
say right, left, right, left, right, left, which is a mantra that I use, which is,
Mhm.
right, left, next step, next step. And then I can get into literally my steps. But if I'm having a panic attack, I like the question because then I have to answer that question.
Mm.
And the answering of the question automatically helps me move away from the outcome or result or the pressure. And again, puts me in a place where I am going to focus on something that I have control over, something that I can take responsibility on. So, what does this moment need from me? Well, if my heart rate's too high, this moment needs me to get my heart rate down. How am I going to do that? My breath, my cadence, what does this moment need from me? Am I feeling some pain? Do I need to make adjustments? So you ask yourself, I have an equipment failure. Okay, what does this moment need from me? Okay, remember, I got to pull out, I got to, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
from whatever equipment you have right now. Was it someone on one of your podcasts? I think someone like literally took out their insoles and ran without insoles or something.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
But again, in that moment, it's like, oh crap, this isn't going the way I planned. Okay, wait, stop. What does this moment need from me? And then you start problem solving.
Mhm.
And now you're not, yes, you still have that pressure, but now you're taking agency. You're bringing it back to something you can take responsibility over, you can have control over. And that is a way to, I don't want to say the word calm down, but it is a way to start gaining momentum.
Mm.
And then you're just like, okay, my heart rate's down. Okay, what's next? How am I doing with food? Okay, how am I doing with timing? So one thing leads to another. But if you can just ask, what does this moment need from me? And then maybe you notice that you're just, you're making fists. You're running with because you're so tense. What does this
Mhm.
moment need from me? Okay, maybe I need to do something called progressive muscular relaxation, which is tense and then release. So maybe I need to open up my hands and shake it out, right?
Mhm.
And just have some loose, let the oxygen and blood flow through my extremities. I don't know. But if you start asking yourself a question, then you're going to answer it and you're going to start taking action because you just answered it. And now that is the best way to follow through. I'm not a big believer in the moment when someone's at in that point to say it's okay, don't worry about it.
Mm.
It's not okay because I am having a panic attack and
Mhm.
I am worried about it. So those things don't really help, in my humble opinion.
Well, I agree 100%. And I'll use this. We hear this a lot in ultra running where like you experience something and they're like, oh, I'm just not going to think about it and it's going to go away. And it's like, it rarely just goes away. You usually have to question yourself, like, what is actually going on here and how can I resolve it? Like if my knee hurts or, you know, maybe you're kind of like dealing with a bonk and like you can't forget about those things. You have to approach that situation, try to adapt, overcome, figure out do you need more nutrition, do you need more hydration, do you need some sodium, is it your knees hurting because your gait's off, you're running differently, like there's so many things. And we hear a lot, I sadly I hear a lot of like, oh, just ignore it, it'll go away. Like, not when you're 80 miles in and you still have 20 more miles to go. That's not something to ignore. So I love the idea of questioning what's going on.
It's tuning into the work. So in concentration, the skill of concentration, one technique is association and dissociation.
Mm.
So dissociation would be tuning out of the work. And there are moments in these long races where you find yourself, feeling really good. You kind of find yourself, in quotations, do I say easy spot?
Mhm.
And you do look up and look around and have appreciation and kind of get lost in the experience. And then there are other times when you have to associate, you have association, and that's when you have to tune into the work. And the greatest, many, many years ago, Diane Nyad, did I get her name right? I think she swam from Cuba to Florida.
Okay.
I think, yeah, Diana Nyad, I believe. And she said it the best. I remember watching her on Oprah. She said, When it's easy, that's when you can like look around and kind of get lost in all the blues. And when it's hard, I mean, she had a mantra, find a way. When she goes, when it gets hard, that is not when you're looking around. That is when you
Mm,
need to tune into the work. And so she said, find a way. And so I guess I'm just adding on that, which is, well, okay, let's figure out how we find a way.
mm,
And the question is, what does this moment need from me? And then you tune into the work, and then you
yeah.
start building confidence back up because you're doing the work, and it's going to work.
Yeah. I love this. And it's so true. It makes me think of like, we have highs and lows. And when you're in a high, everything's great. You're on cloud nine, the race is the best thing in the entire world. And then when we're in a low, and I experienced this in my 200 where I could not get out of the low, and mentally it was probably sleep deprivation, and that's a whole different ball game. But that, like, when we do experience lows, I feel like sometimes we make them a lot worse because we are in that spiral, or we're trying to avoid it, whatever the case may be. But approaching it with that, let's do the work, let's figure out what I can do to come out of this. It may not always be that simple, but I feel like sometimes it could be that simple in an ultra run or an ultra race or wherever you're doing.
I also find, and again, the coolest thing about what I do is that it's both a science. There's definitely science to what I'm sharing, but then also it's an art. We have to figure out how it works best for you. And there are plenty of athletes that I know that I've worked with who like to give themselves, and some people will time it, like I'm going to let myself be sad and complain and be miserable for a minute or so. And then there's others like, just get to that tree. You can complain all you want and be miserable, and then when we get to that tree, we're going to ask the question, what does this moment need from me?
Mm.
So giving yourself some grace is really important, in my humble opinion. But I don't just pause there. It's give yourself some grace, never let yourself off the hook.
Mm.
And so there's always something. So that's why, giving yourself some grace is allowing yourself to be human. Not letting yourself off the hook is, what does this moment need from me? And if you can put the two together, I think that, listen, this sport, this, ultra and endurance, it is not just about finishing. You have to conserve energy in order to finish. So
Hmm.
this is real energy management we're talking about as well. In other sports, sprinting sports, you don't really have to conserve energy, it's all out. But in this, it's energy management and wasting. I'll use the word wasting a lot of energy getting upset with yourself because you're in a low.
Hmm.
Wasting a lot of energy because you're so critical about yourself because you had one doubt. It's a lot of wasted energy that needs to be conserved so that it can be utilized for good.
Yes, and as someone who's been through it and have heard tons of stories, I've tried to tell people, like, it's normal. We're gonna have lows. We're gonna deal with them. I've been there, done that. But don't let it consume you, because it is so depleting as an athlete to be out there in the middle of a 100, even if it's 50 miles, any big race, to have the wasted energy of, like, the mind and going down a negative spiral and letting it consume you. And I love the approach of, like, if you want to be human, because we're all human, we all do things, like, be upset, be sad, be in the moment, enjoy it for till that tree, and then get get out of it. Like, you got to figure out how to get out of it. I love that. And that's a huge tool, I think, a lot of us use, but maybe sometimes forget when we're in the moment too. So we'll have to, try to push it in as many people as possible, that they have to do that. It will pay dividends in the long run, for sure.
I think we do it in other ways. I mean, I know when I'm out there doing my fitness, and it's a hard, whether I'm in a hard hill. I live in Colorado, so there's mountains everywhere. So I'm generally climbing something, and if it's a hard climb, I'll say to myself, just get to that
Yeah.
one point. So I'm using these short term goals all the time. But maybe people listening and watching haven't used it to, I'm in a low. Okay, let myself be this low for this amount of time to this target, and then we're gonna switch things up after that. Short
Yeah.
term goal setting.
Yeah. And, a big thing with ultra running is we're always, like, if you're doing a 200 mile, you don't look like at the start and go, oh my gosh, I just ran 1 mile. I have 199 more miles to go. We try to look at it, short. Let's go to the next aid station. That's only 20 miles. And I think you're giving great, evidence of like sometimes it's even smaller than that, like of just let's get up this climb. And I've told people that. I've had people call me like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm like, well, where are you at? Like, let's walk through it. And they're, well, I still have 20 miles to the next aid station. I'm like, well, let's just go one foot in front of the other. Like, don't overconsume with the all bearing and the craziness of doing longer distances. Sometimes it is just boiling it down to smaller, achievable steps and goals, or something more digestible rather than the big, lofty, crazy thing that we're going after.
Yeah. And you can look ahead and you can look behind. You know, you can look
Mhm.
ahead, but you need to be strategic about it. So if you can look ahead to, to kind of get you excited again and motivated, like where you're going.
Mm.
Like this Saturday, we did a 4,000 foot climb, and there were moments, even at the beginning, there were moments where I kind of put myself at the top of the mountain just to have that motivation. But if I only focus on that, it's going to get daunting.
Yeah.
Oh my
Mhm.
God, I have so far to go. So I just use it momentarily to get like, this is going to be so exciting when I get there. And I literally visualize myself there, but then I bring it back to right, left, right, left. I bring it back to the current moment. In addition, when someone says, oh, I still have 20 miles to go. Well, can you, in addition, also say, I've also ran, if it's 200 miles, we've also already run, like a 180 or wherever they are in the course. Let's just acknowledge what you've done as well, but don't get stuck in the past because now you're not focused on the present. So, but we can use the future. We can use the end goal and how much far we have to go and the enthusiasm of getting there, how far we've already come and the excitement that that brings. We can use it momentarily and then bring it back to, like you just said, this target, this short term goal, this right, left, present moment.
Yeah. And that's so true. And not to say I forget about it, but we do. We get caught up in the moments when we're out there and we get all consumed with the negative spiral that's going on. But I think something that's really important, and I use this a lot on myself, is like when I've done something and, I'm in a race and it's getting really hard, I always try to remind myself, like, I just did something that I thought was unbearable about 20 miles ago. Like, I'm fine. Like how many times do we encounter stuff like that?
That's a great, great, great point. Such a great point because that's evidence.
Hmm.
That's evidence. How do we get confident? By doing what you just did, by remembering what you just remembered about yourself. That's evidence. And there's no denying it.
Yes, yeah. You literally just did it or have done it in the past, which is super super important. And it is it's so true. Confidence is not something that you mentioned this and I say this all the time. So I loved when you said it, but like confidence is not affirmation shouted in a mirror at yourself. It is doing the work and looking, and I think it's doing the work but also looking back and maybe taking that of like, oh, I did do this. I tend to be humble at times and I don't like to like, oh, I did this and I did this. But a lot of times personally, I have to look back and say, I've done all of these things, you can still do this. And I feel like sometimes we forget to actually look at what we've done, but we may know it, but we don't actually use that as fuel for whatever we're trying to go after.
But we're very happy to pinpoint one bad moment and have that come with us to every moment of the rest of our lives. So we gotta, how is that being fair to ourselves as well? So yeah, confidence is built by evidence. So you might as well collect the evidence and then let yourself be confident.
Mm, yeah.
Being confident and cockiness are not the same thing.
Mm,
Let yourself be confident. Own it. You don't have to
yeah.
scream it on top of a rooftop, but you have to be able to acknowledge it for yourself or you're just doing yourself a disservice.
Mm. Yes, I love that. And I try to tell that to a lot of people. Like you can be confident, but that doesn't mean you have to be egotistical or anything of that nature. Like just owning it. Like I'm a big I own your shit. Like own it. It doesn't matter if it's kind of goofy or it's kind of weird. Like if you can have the confidence and within yourself, you'll go so much further. And I feel like a lot of people struggle to have self confidence. So I'm always encouraging people like own your shit. You can do it. So I love to hear that. And I one thing to kind of like maybe go inside with this is we as athletes, as humans, you mentioned it, we do a mistake and we crumble, or like one little thing goes wrong in a race and it's something we dwell on, or one a great example, we miss one run. I have so many athletes that come to me, they're like, hey, this happened in life and I couldn't get my run in. Oh, is my training going to be messed up? And I'm like, absolutely not. So, like, what do you see within the work that you do on maybe mistakes or errors or something where training or whatever the case may be does not go 100% to plan? Do you see a lot of crumbling? What's a
Yeah. A good thing to remember, or I'll just ask the question and then people can answer it for themselves. In your experience with yourself or watching others, are the best athletes the perfect athletes or the athletes that best recovered?
mm,
So we can strive for perfection. I strive for perfection. I don't do anything and say, I don't want to be perfect.
mhm,
I strive for perfection. I do not demand it of myself. And I think there's a difference. Striving has the curiosity and the excitement behind it. Let's see what happens when I insert, goal, versus demanding. I have to,
mhm.
I must, needs to. That's a whole different energy experience. One is more expressive, curiosity, excitement. The other one is very contracted, tight, and forceful. So strive for perfection all you want. Do not, I don't, I'm good with it. Just don't demand it. But equally, if not more important, is the goal to be the best recoverer you can be. And when you make a mistake, how do I best recover?
Mhm.
In a lot of team sports, they call it like, I think Steph Curry learned it from his basketball coach, next shot mentality. So to me, it's the how do we best recover? So
Mhm.
if we didn't hit this mile in the time that we wanted, it's not about, oh, it wasn't perfect. It is the immediate question is, how do I best recover? If we
Mhm.
missed a run, how do I best recover? If I make a mistake, how do I best recover? That's the question. That's resilience. And that is optimal performance by a human being.
Yes, I love that. And it's so true. It's is learning from your failures and adapting, readjusting, overcoming the whatever it may be, and just continuing to go, not to let it keep you down.
And you just said something, if I could just, you said learn from your failures. I 100% agree with you
Mhm.
with a little bit of a caveat.
Okay.
There is performance mode and then there is review mode. They
Mm.
do those are two things that I don't believe coexist at the same time.
Yes.
When we're performing, we're performing. When we're reviewing and reflecting and learning, then we're reviewing, reflecting, and learning. So when we make a mistake, when I say, how do we best recover? I want to know, and you might take some information from what just happened, but for the purposes of applying it to this performance. So I don't want someone running to have made a mistake with their, I don't know, maybe they go out too fast because they got excited and they were
Yep.
with some people and they just got out too fast and then they have to figure out how to recover from that mistake. I want them to immediately get back into a recovery zone and pace it, but they're still in performance mode. I don't want them running and then thinking about this mistake that they just made for the rest of
Mm.
the run. After the run, after you've recovered, before you start prepping for the next race, it's then looking to see where are the learning opportunities. But reflection and learning and performing in the moment do not go together
Yeah,
because
it
then you're
makes
not present.
yeah, I was gonna say it makes so much sense because as someone who's done this before where I've made a little mistake and then it dwelled on me the entire time, you don't want to do that in that situation. Yes. Okay. No, I love that. And that it makes so much sense hearing it split up between the two.
Yeah, stay in performance mode. Now you may need to take the information. That mile I ran at this time, so that was a little too fast or too slow. So I need to learn from that quick and apply it to this next mile. But I don't want you analyzing that last mile while you're running this current mile. I don't want you reflecting. I want you in performance zone and then you reflect on it after the fact.
Yes, 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 yes. That's so now that you say that, I'm like, duh, that makes so much sense. Very cool, very cool. Well, I appreciate all the time you've given, and I do have one question.
Yeah.
One last one, and it can be a quick fire, rapid fire, whatever. But you do this for a living. You've talked to so many people. You know, are continuously educating so many people throughout this. What is one thing, if you could tell one piece of advice for anyone that's listening? Maybe they didn't listen to everything, you know what I mean? But they hear this one piece of advice. What would that be that you would like to give to endurance athletes right now?
There's a lot of time, obviously, a lot of hours and a lot of time, which means there's a lot of opportunities to be thinking and have thoughts. I haven't mentioned this today, so I'm going to add it, but it is really important. Just remember that you are not your thoughts. It's just your thinking sometimes, and you do not have to believe everything you think. And so just remember that you may be thinking a doubt, a fear, and part of the doubt tolerance that I do for myself is sometimes I kind of laugh at myself and be like, Haley, come on, that's just your thinking. There's no evidence to support that. You don't have to believe everything you think. And then I kind of just like, I'm almost like laugh at myself and then keep it going. So just remember you're not your thoughts, because there's a lot of time out there for a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
You are not your thoughts. So sometimes it's just your thinking.
That is a phenomenal piece of advice because I have thought a lot of things and I do the same thing where I'm like, why would I ever think that? You know? So I love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and talking all things. I will have your social and all things below so people can link up and follow along. And you have published books, so I will encourage people to read. I am a reader myself, so I'm going to dive into your books next. But thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks for having me.
Of course.